Okay, what do you want me to tell you?
Well, you were telling me about your grandma, and she said, what was it she said, the good old days?
They weren't good old days. They were just days of hard work. And she knew.
Yeah. And so you said her mom died when she was just 10 days old?
When she was 10 days old, her sister, I think she had maybe 2 older sisters than she, but the sister she talked about was Nanny, and Nanny was 10 years older than she.
Oh, wow, that's quite a
And
spread.
so what they did, they would put milk on a cloth and soak it and put it in Grandma's mouth and let her suck on that.
Okay, because this was before baby bottles.
Right. They tried, also putting milk in a bottle, just not a baby bottle, just a bottle.
Glass bottle.
And putting the rag in there securely and letting her suck on that. I don't know how successful that was, but I'm sure that as soon as they could, they put her on soft foods as possibly.
Yes.
And anyway, but Nanny was 10 years older, and can you imagine a 10-year-old having the responsibility of a
taking care
child?
of a baby. Oh my
Right.
goodness, I can't even imagine.
And she was born July 23rd, 1871.
Oh, wow. And so this was your grandmother.
Null. Well,
Null.
Grandma Chambers, she was a Null.
Okay.
That was her maiden name. And her name was Almeida Elizabeth. And we called her, and she was called Lizzie all her life.
Izzy or Lizzie?
Lizzie.
Lizzie.
Lizzie. All
That's
her
cute,
life she was
yeah.
called Lizzie.
I think I'd go by Lizzie too.
A very hardworking woman. No foolishness about her whatsoever.
No nonsense.
No. None.
Oh, you remember her too, Jerry?
Her favorite
remember her.
Her favorite saying was, idleness is the devil's workshop. And so therefore, if we grandchildren were around, we had jobs.
You had to keep busy.
We had to keep busy. She made her lye soap, and I'm not quite sure. I know that she ran water through ashes to get the lye, I guess. And then she used lard that they had rendered when they killed hogs.
All right.
And I don't know the process of making, but I watched her do it.
Yeah.
And it's days. It doesn't take. You don't do it in a day.
Yes, it's a long process and it's involved.
Right.
Did she do it over like an open fire?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
Okay.
You started out, I think, in a wash pot.
Oh.
Is what she started out in.
So a big batch.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there were certain things that she did to it. There was her laundry soap that was stronger. Then there was the soap that she used to wash her dishes, and that wasn't quite as strong. And then there was soap that was white, really white, and that was what she bathed with and washed her hair with.
Oh, so skin safe soap.
Yeah, skin safe soap. But anyway.
So did they raise the hogs that they
Oh,
slaughtered?
yes,
Oh, wow.
we always had hogs. We had hogs.
They weren't wild?
No,
Okay.
no, they were kept in a pen.
Okay.
Now, when Grandma was, now this was before I was born, but when my dad was a boy, they raised sheep also.
Oh.
And they would shear them in the spring. And Grandma would save the wool, wash it, get it clean, and then she would card it. And then she would spin her thread. You've seen this, the spinning wheel
yes.
downstairs.
The walking wheel, right?
Right. And she would spin her own yarn, and then that's what she used to knit her socks, her sweaters, whatever she wanted to knit.
Oh, that is so neat.
That flax, that blanket.
Now that was my great-grandmother. That was Grandma's mother, and her name was, Grandma's was Elizabeth Almeida. Her mother was Almeida Elizabeth.
So I made Elizabeth make that one? Make that flax?
If I hadn't got the grandmothers mixed up. But
it was linen?
But Grandma's mother made that prior to 1871 because that's the year she died.
Yeah.
And but they raised the flax. She beat the flax out. I don't know how she did that. I don't know anything about it. And she spun that and her wool, dyed it, And then she, on her loom, made the coverlet
Wow.
that's hanging upstairs, downstairs in the basement.
Did she use natural dyes that she?
She used the brown, I believe, in it was and that's the wool, was black walnut hulls.
I give
Made
it
her-
That's a
brown.
classic dye.
Right, now, the yellow, somebody told me she probably used goldenrod, but I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know that for sure. I don't know.
I would believe it. I mean,
And so, and I don't know the pattern that Grandma and all used to do that, but when I was at Ozark Folk Center in North Arkansas, she said if you could send me a picture of it, then perhaps we could identify the pattern.
oh yeah, that's a
And
great idea.
I haven't done that.
Well, it'll be easy now because you can just do it on your phone.
And but it was hard for Grandma. She had twin brothers, Nathan and Will, who were just older than she. She had another Wiley. I don't know what age group they came in, the
Right.
order. I just know Grandma was the baby.
Oh wow. So twins run in that family, don't they?
Yes, on both sides of my family. My grandmother Hilbert and my grandmother Chambers both had twins.
Goodness. You
Grandma.
think Becky's gonna have twins? She's not.
Well, we don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, it would be the female anyway, rather.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
So,
Oh my goodness.
so anyway, but then, see, and then when my dad grew up, he had, my dad was the third child. Alfred was the first, and that was Clara. You remember Clara?
Yes, I do.
That was Clara's father. And then Isaiah was born next, and evidently he had cerebral palsy because he never did walk.
Oh.
His grandma said he was crippled in his feet, and he died when he was about 4. And then my dad was born, and then Dad's sister Velvy,
Uh-huh.
and then Uncle Roy and his twin, and the twin only lived about a month.
Oh no.
And then Uncle Melvin, and then there was another child, another son born later.
What was the name of Roy's twin?
Ray,
Ray and Roy.
Ray and Roy, right. And so, they grew everything they ate. They butchered hogs, they butchered sheep, and they butchered also cows,
Oh, so they had cows too.
Oh, yeah, we had cows. Yes, my job was to churn.
Oh, you made butter.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, we had what?
You had milk cows then?
Milk cows, yes, we had milk cows. And everybody had milk cows. That was our milk.
If you wanted milk, you had milk
You
cows.
had milk cows. We had pigs, hogs, chickens, and cows on our farm,
That way
of
you
course.
could have eggs too, and chicken. Did
Right.
You,
Oh, yes.
You ate chicken?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
And so, planted the bean, everybody had a big garden and grew, and of course now Grandma had a cellar, and she would store cabbage and things down there. But since it doesn't get that cold in Arkansas, those things and potatoes had to be probably used up by Christmas. And
Or else they'd go bad.
right.
Right.
Grandma raised turkeys. We did not raise turkeys. She raised geese. We did not raise geese.
Did you get goose feathers from her though?
She plucked the geese feathers and made her pillows
Yes.
and feather beds.
Oh wow. I bet those were warm.
Yep, that was the
Probably a little
purpose.
hot on a summer
Yeah,
night.
but with your house not being insulated, the cool breeze came through by the windows and the cracks, and so it was not an easy life. Cooked on a wood stove.
Wood stove. Well, so did you have to start the fire every day, or did they just keep it
Every
running?
day, every day. Everybody had fireplaces primarily rather than heaters. Let's see, when I was a kid, we lived with Grandma until I was 2. Daddy built our house about that year of 1935. And Alverne is the only one of the children that was not born at Grandma's. And then, of course, Kathleen was not. She was born in the hospital. The only one of my mother's 6 that was born in the hospital.
Wow.
And
So what year was Kathy born?
Kathy was born in 1947.
Okay. Yeah.
So from 35, the year Alverne was born, to 47. Now, see, I was 14 when Kathy was born. Alverne was 12. A large gap. But anyway, but in the fall, when the first real cold spell, that was hog killing day. They killed the hog, heated the water, scalded it, and scraped the hair off.
Oh, that made it easier, I bet.
Yeah, you couldn't do it otherwise.
Yeah,
And you didn't skin hogs.
yeah. You use the skin, right?
Right. And then they dressed it out and put the meat on a long table that they put planks on sawhorses and cut it up. And then the shoulders and the hams were set apart because that's the meatier part. The loins, we didn't cut out pork chops. That was loin. And it was cut in sections. And Mother would bake that with sweet potatoes. And it really tasted good, we thought, anyway.
I bet it was
You
good.
had big gardens.
Oh yeah, Mom canned.
Sometimes it doesn't rain there to support your garden. Did you water it?
No. Everything was depending on nature as to whether it was a good garden or not. But tried to get the garden in as early as possible.
So it can set deeper roots.
And then peas don't require as much water as beans. And so peas could be planted later. But the garden was broken up early. The onions were set. The sweet potatoes were set. Irish potatoes were planted. Cabbage was set out. Carrots were planted early. All those things that were planted early that required a longer growing season.
What was you and your siblings' role in the garden?
Shaking out the Bermuda grass after
Really?
Daddy plowed it.
Oh, so he planted that as a cover crop.
No.
Oh,
We tried to get rid of it because it will take over.
oh my goodness.
Dead weed.
That was getting rid of as much grass as possible. And so that was our job. And we helped Daddy put out the onion sets because he would go down the row and poke a hole. And then Alverne and I would come behind him and put the little onion set there and press the dirt around it. Right.
So wait, how do you make onion sets? Because I've bought onion sets at the nursery.
Well, we
but-
bought them.
Oh, you did buy them.
He bought those. Now, sometimes he would put out what he called, I've forgotten what they called, but they were little bulbs of onions, and he would put those in the ground,
Oh,
too.
okay. Like just a baby onion.
Right, and they would grow and
I
make.
know they're nigh impossible to grow from seed, so
And-
I don't know what magic they do to make the sets.
And I don't know either. But Dad loved to look through seed catalogs, and he loved to try things new. And he'd say, Ethel, what do you think about that? Don't you think we need to try that?
He was an early adopter.
Yeah, he loved. Well, here's a kind of bean we hadn't tried. Maybe we should try this one.
Did he find anything like unusual for the area before other people did?
I would imagine some of the things he did,
Yeah.
but nobody talked about it. It was just we grew
Just for
it.
yours.
Right,
For
we
your
grew
use.
it, and that was it.
Since that's your food supply,
Now, if I can
he planted stuff that he knew he could count on.
Right.
For the most part.
Right,
And then would try just a small section of the new thing.
a couple of rows.
For
And see
variety.
how that worked.
How
And
that
if that worked, he might incorporate that.
Save seeds.
Yeah.
Now, we saved seeds, and he always had a big watermelon patch, and peanuts. We grew
yeah.
peanuts, and cantaloupe,
Oh, yum.
and we grew those in the field. We called it the Indian field because before my grandfather homesteaded that area, that acreage, the Indians came, the Choctaw Indians came, and they would camp there at a spring that was in the woods behind where I grew up, the house where I grew up. And we called it the Indian field. And when Daddy was plowing, we would follow him, and we'd pick up arrowheads and bits of pottery and that sort of
Wow.
thing.
I remember seeing some of
Yes,
the,
you
like,
did.
pipes and
Yeah,
arrowheads.
now that clay pipe that I had was found there.
Wow.
And my granddad Chambers, George, smoked that pipe.
Oh, really? So he found it and thought, this is
It was
pretty
all
good.
in one piece. Now, it's not in one piece now. I don't know who dropped and broke it, but, you know, it,
Well, it saw plenty of use, I bet.
right. And
So back to the garden, what were the staple items? You mentioned potatoes and cantaloupe
Yes.
and watermelon.
now those weren't grown in the,
That's-
cantaloupe and watermelon and peanuts, and those were not grown in the garden. Those took up too much space, so they were raised in the field, the Indian field separately, right. Main crop, you got in your onions, your cabbage, and spinach, those kinds of things early.
Lettuce,
Yeah, lettuce,
okay. Beans,
and then your lima beans, string beans, green beans, now we call them string beans. Of course, your potatoes were planted early. And then your peas were the last thing to be planted, peas and okra. Tomatoes were planted as soon as the danger of frost was over.
what kind of peas did you plant?
They planted black eye, whippoorwills, and crowder. At that time, we didn't know anything about purple hulls.
Or lady
At that
peas?
time, our lady peas, we didn't know, those
Really?
came later.
Okay.
And then we didn't plant corn in the garden. That was a field crop. And so,
Was that in the Indian field too?
and that was in the field. Popcorn, Daddy grew popcorn.
Really? Now, how would you pop that? Was it in a big pot?
On the fire, we had a wire basket that you could pull the handle back, and Mom would put the popcorn in there, and then we'd hold it over the fire in the fireplace. And,
So it was air popped?
yeah, it was air pop.
Wow.
And our treat,
Cutting edge.
and our treat was for Mama to make popcorn balls. She boiled syrup. Oh, that we drew the cane, and then we took it to the syrup mill and had it cooked.
Was it sugar cane or ribbon cane?
We had ribbon cane and we had sorghum. Sorghum was the most because it was easier. We didn't have enough ground that was damp, that would stay damp
For sugar cane.
for sugar cane. We had a little bit, but mostly sorghum.
So you didn't have damp ground, so you didn't grow rice.
No. Now, down in the woods, Grandpa Knoll put up dikes to grow rice, but he never tried it.
Oh, he was
And those-
expecting he would, and it,
And that was during the Civil War period, and so he never did after the Civil War. He was sort of a broken man,
oh no.
and he just didn't do that. He just farmed, but he didn't try the rice.
So did he fight in the Civil War?
Yes, he did.
Oh, and he survived.
Yep, he was captured.
Really?
They turned him loose and said, if we catch you, we will kill you.
Oh my goodness.
So-
And he was able to make his way back home from there?
Yeah, he made his way back home.
Do you know where he was captured?
No, I don't really know. Now, I went to the library in Magnolia, and it said he was fought in the Battle of Vicksburg. I doubt that.
What was his name?
Bradley Knoll,
Bradley.
right. I doubt that. I don't think that he ever got that far. Now, my great-grandfather Hilburn did fight in the Battle of Vicksburg.
That was a long siege.
Yeah,
What was his name?
Joseph Hilburn.
Joseph.
Wow.
Yeah. So, anyway,
And so Bradley,
In the Confederate Army,
in the Confederate.
wanted him, even though once he'd been captured and released, they still wanted him to go fight again, right?
Yes, they did. They came looking for him.
really?
And so he couldn't win. If he fought on the Confederate side, he was at risk of being captured again and killed.
Hmm.
And if he didn't fight,
He was, if he said, I'm not going, he probably would have been killed. I don't know.
also, right?
I
So
don't
he had to
know.
hide.
Yeah, so that's why he hid down in the woods.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did he have like a hidden cabin, or did he just
No,
camp out?
no, it's just camping out,
Wow.
just camping out.
Did he move around places?
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
I,
But those woods, were,
They were dense.
they were unsettled, they were not cleared, nothing cleared.
Nobody went down there.
No, nobody. And so,
wow.
but anyway, so that's kind of the history of my family. Farmers,
Mm-hmm.
hardworking people, honest people.
Yeah.
And Daddy said that it would take them 3 days going into town. Of course, they went by wagon.
Right.
And it was almost a day of traveling. And they'd get there late. You know, that creek, you probably don't remember, but you may, if you go the Calhoun Road, that creek south of town, you'll cross it. And that's Nations Creek. They would tie up the, hobble rather,
The horses?
the horses or the mules, whichever one they had, probably
Oh, okay,
mules.
mules, okay.
And then they would walk into the town but that for people who walked all the time, that was no distance. It might have been a mile, but so what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Take care of the business that they went in town for
Uh-huh.
and get that done the next day, because they would spend the night. Of course, they had chores to do before they left home, so they didn't leave at the crack of dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd go and take care of business, and then it would be too late to start on the way back home. And so the next day they'd go back home.
So they'd camp out a couple days.
Right.
So they could spend a whole day in town,
But if they stopped at the creek, then the mules had something.
They had to have water to drink.
and they could just browse, I guess.
Well, they probably took corn or,
Corn.
or hay.
So what kind of business did they do in town? Were they selling,
Well,
buying?
Probably not doing much selling,
Uh-huh.
but they did barter.
Oh, okay.
You know, you could barter your eggs and that kind of thing. Mostly eggs, I think, is all they bartered.
Oh, man, that sounds like it would be hard to
But
bring eggs in a wagon and not have them break.
I don't know that they ever did that.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know. But they went in for staples.
What were some of the staples?
Staples, sugar, flour, salt, baking powder, soda. And then if they needed any staples as far as equipment is concerned, I like to fix harness
Uh-huh.
or a wagon, something like that.
So hardware.
Hardware. Mhm.
Leatherworking, and I guess fabric for making
Oh, yeah.
clothes.
Oh, yeah. Grandma might say, bring me 2 yards of whatever,
So your dad would pick out whatever the dresses would be made out of.
or something. or my granddad.
Or your granddad. Oh,
One or the other,
yeah.
whoever went into town.
So they say, I like that one.
And so if it were my dad, it was something red probably.
Was that his favorite color?
That's his favorite color. Anyway, but, and then you said you wanted to, about the way they process their meat.
Yes.
When we killed hogs, it had to be cold. And then they cut it up. We had a smokehouse. And we had shelves on there that Daddy would, first of all, he would salt it down in rock salt for so many days. Then he would take it out of that and wash that off And then he did what he calls sugar curing. Now that he bought. And it's a combination of, I guess, brown sugar and spices. And he rubbed that in for so many days.
Okay.
And then after that period was over, then he hung it over the smoke. And he smoked it with hickory.
Oh, okay.
But hickory will make smoke burn really slow. And he had dug a pit about this big around down and that's where he had his fire.
Wow.
And he smoked it for so long. And he also smoked what we call side meat, which is where they get the bacon.
Yes.
And now we ground meat and sausage, pork sausage, and we knew that we couldn't keep it. So Mom would sew up bags out of white fabric, probably domestic, and they would be about this wide, and they would stuff it, and she would pat it until it was about that thick,
Okay.
and hang it up over the smoke and smoke it.
So it was like little squares of meat then?
Then when she wanted to cook sausage, then she would rip that and just cut it up in strips and
Okay.
cook it.
Wow. That's.
And but curing meat was a long drawn process. But that way we had ham and bacon until up into the summer usually,
Oh,
if not
wow.
more, longer.
That's impressive that it
Well, it
lasted
depends on
so
how
long.
many hogs they killed.
Sure, sure.
Now, now Mama would go out if she wanted ham, to fry ham. She'd just go out to the smokehouse and look up there and I'll take this
Cut it.
chunk.
Cut a piece off.
Right.
Okay.
And then take it in the house and slice it like she wanted it.
And she just fry it in a pan.
Yeah, just in a pan.
That sounds
Uh,
good.
And Mom canned a lot. And I told you we had a wood stove, cook stove. I can remember walking through the kitchen. Mama would be sitting on the back porch at the door so she could see the gauge on the pressure cooker. And there would not be a dry thread on her. Her face
so
would
hot?
so hot. Her face would be so red, and she would be wiping her face with her apron and watching the gauge there. And I would walk through the kitchen barefoot because I went barefoot in the summertime.
Of course.
And it would be hot to the bottom of my feet. It's a wonder the house hadn't caught on fire, you know. But
What's the floor made of?
that was day after day. And during canning season, she canned her peas, the butter beans, the string beans, corn, tomatoes.
And this was during the summer when they were ripe, so it was already
That's
really
right,
hot.
and it was already hot, you know. Now, we didn't know how hot it was, we just knew it was hot. We didn't have a thermometer to say
Right.
it's 100 degrees, but the kitchen
You could feel
probably was
it.
115
Yeah,
or
probably.
120.
Oh my goodness.
But then she built the fire in the stove, in the cook stove in the summertime, and made breakfast. And then probably the fire died down while she was gathering what she was going to cook for our dinner. We didn't call it lunch, it was dinner.
Right, and then what we call dinner was supper.
That's right. And then whatever we didn't eat at dinner, that's what we ate for supper.
All right.
So the main meal was lunch or dinner.
What?
So the main meal was basically dinner, lunch.
Yes, that's right.
The mid meal.
Right. And she would,
Twice in the day, breakfast.
right, breakfast, and right, there was no supper cooked. No supper cooked. Rang the dinner bell at 12.
What
And-
did the dinner bell look like?
It was just that, this one out here that
Yes.
Debbie has, only it was smaller.
So it was a big bell on a stand with
On
a
this-
cord?
Yeah,
Wow.
there was a post in the backyard,
Uh-huh.
and the bell was hung on a saddle, what's called a bell saddle.
Oh.
And we rang the bell for Daddy to come from the field to eat. And he came to the field, and now he had a mule that he plowed with called Gladys. Gladys knew when 12 o'clock came. She didn't have to hear a bell.
She's like the dogs.
She knew.
Exactly what time it was.
And
Set your watch by Gladys.
And she knew she was going to the barn, and she was going to get water, and she was going to get some corn.
But she was gonna work that afternoon.
And she was going to work that afternoon
But she was ready
until
for her
dark.
lunch break.
until dark. Sometimes Alvern and I would walk to the field and say, Daddy, can we ride Gladys home? And sometimes he'd let us, but usually he'd say, Gladys has been working so hard all day. No, you can't do it today.
So did you have just Gladys or did you have another
It
mule
was
too?
Gladys and Queen.
Queen,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I remember one time Uncle Roy and Daddy had cut fireweed wood. See, we had a fireplace too,
Uh-huh.
and they had loaded the wagon pretty heavily, and they started up this hill from the pond, and they balked.
Uh-oh,
But mules will do that. Horses will not.
right.
But mules, if they say, I can't pull it, they're not going to keep straining.
Right.
They'll quit. And so Daddy and Uncle Roy had to take some wood off. And then they went on up the hill. But
That's
Gladys
right.
agreed.
No can do.
But
Smart.
then one time, we just had an old wagon, and this was during the Depression, late 30s. I was sitting on top of the load of wood. They started up that same hill, and a wagon wheel broke.
Oh, no.
And I cried. And Uncle Roy says, and I feel like crying too.
I'm sure he did. Oh, goodness.
So-
Oh, wow. That's rough.
That was,
So it sounds like your family farmed a lot. Was there much hunting or fishing?
oh, of course. Well, they hunted a lot of times, and Daddy went fishing. Now, that's one thing he did. Whereas Dandy's dad did not do this. And Gerald would say, his dad would say, well, we'll probably get finished by noon Saturday, and you'll have Saturday evening off. He said, we never did finish by noon, and we worked till dark. And other boys had the afternoon off to go fishing.
Oh.
Well, my dad always took off at noon on Saturday. And that was, he and the boys went fishing,
Okay.
or they went hunting. And
Wow.
So-
whatever,
So if they did catch fish,
they brought them home, cleaned them, and we fried them
Just that same
you ate
day.
them that day.
that day. Right. We
They weren't
didn't
gonna keep.
keep them. That's one thing did not keep. And so,
And if you hunted in the winter, you ate it that day?
probably, as well as I could remember,
What
we
all,
did.
What all did they hunt? Do you know?
Squirrels.
Squirrels?
Uh-huh. I remember eating rabbit, but that's not, Daddy didn't hunt rabbit very
Okay.
often. But it was squirrel.
So did he have dogs to help?
Oh, yes, we had coon dogs. We didn't have lap dogs.
Of course.
They
They're
were not
working
allowed,
dogs.
they were working dogs. The only dog that was ever allowed to stay in the house was a little terrier named Tiny.
Tiny.
And she was a little black and white terrier.
Did she catch mice?
Oh my, kill rattlesnakes.
Oh, wow.
Mom was telling, where Dad built our house was the location where my great-grandfather had his house, Bradley Knoll. And but in that area, copperheads, snakes were there. She could kill them. She shake them until they.
So,
But Mama said she was washing. Said, of course, washed with a rub board. She was washing, and she heard Alvern jabbering. Alvern was walking, but not talking, I guess, very much. About, I'd say, 18 months old, probably.
okay.
And she wondered why Alvern was so excited and jabbering. And she was about to reach down and pick up that copperhead.
Oh, no.
And Tiny, no, that was before Tiny. Mama killed it.
Oh, my.
That's a lucky catch because, oh, wow, it's so dangerous.
But let me tell you what Tiny did. See, I told you we went barefoot. We had sandburrs in our yard. And do you know what they are?
Yes, I do. We have them where I live too.
Okay, all right.
Painful.
I stepped on one.
Oh.
And so I went in the house and I was crying. And Mama said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I got a sandburr in my foot. And I can't get it out." And she said, "Well, let me get it out." And I said, "No, it'll hurt. No, I'm not going to do it." So I sat there holding my foot. Tiny was watching. And lo and behold, the next thing I knew, she reached and grabbed it and got it out of my foot.
With her mouth?
Yes,
Teddy got it?
yes, Tiny got it. I was so mad at her.
Amazing.
But
Wow.
the burr was out of my foot.
a
She,
smart little
well,
dog.
she had pulled enough out of her feet, so she knew.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
yes,
she knew
they
it
get
was hurting.
Stuck between
Yeah.
the dog's toes. That happened to my dog.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Right. And unfortunately, she was bitten by a rattlesnake, and they were chasing rabbits, the hound dogs, and she, of course, she couldn't keep up with the hounds. And she couldn't jump over him, and he got her. And,
Wow.
but,
So it was a lot of dogs at the house then.
yeah, we had, I guess Daddy always had 2 or 3 dogs.
And just to help hunt, I guess.
Dad liked to bird hunt, and he had
Oh, okay.
bird dogs.
Bird dogs. So they would point, I guess?
Yeah,
Okay, and then you could tell them to flush too.
right, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And so we, if he killed quail,
Okay.
yeah, quail used to be plentiful.
Yes.
I remember Dandy tried to reintroduce them.
The thing about quail, they have to have the open area where there's grain, and of course, everybody planted fields.
Open fields.
And so they would go in the fall especially, and peck around and get beans and that sort of thing. Because Daddy planted soybeans too to feed the horses
Oh,
and the
okay.
cows, and for hay.
And the hogs got fed scraps.
Yes,
Table
we called it
scraps.
slop.
Okay. And whatever else you had.
Watermelon, hogs love watermelon and cantaloupe.
Okay.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
I bet they even eat the rind, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
They'll eat anything. Oh, wow.
And no, so it was, we liked to go down to the pig pen when Daddy was bursting up those open those big watermelon, and we'd say, "Can we have a heart?" And so we ate the heart and threw the rest of it over to the hogs.
Wow. So the house you lived in, your dad built it?
Yeah.
Was it a log house?
No,
Or was it
it was plank.
plank?
It was plank.
Okay.
Our first house had 4 rooms,
Uh-huh.
a kitchen, and then 3 bedrooms.
Okay.
Because we didn't have a living room. It was per such. We had a fireplace room where everybody met in the wintertime, and in summer we sat out on the front porch a lot. And then in 1938, they started leasing, oil boom, and they started leasing land, and Daddy leased his land and got enough money that he added 2 rooms, those 2 back rooms. And so what used to be the kitchen was turned into the dining room,
Okay.
and then a kitchen added, and another bedroom, and a back porch was added to the house.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up and I remember though, the first house only had an outside wall. It didn't have an inside wall because Dad didn't have enough money to buy lumber to seal it. And so I remember that we set things on the, what do you call those, fire stops?
Yeah.
Those-
The horizontal bracing.
Right, the braces.
Yeah.
We would set, little things
Like
like,
shelves.
Like shelf.
yeah, like shelves.
Oh, wow.
Like if we had a bottle of Vaseline or something like that, that was set up there.
Oh, wow. So Vaseline, like, they had that back then?
Oh, yeah. That's it.
Petroleum jelly.
Yeah, petroleum jelly.
Wow. So was it oil big at that time, or did that not happen till later?
No, that was the beginning in 1938.
Uh-huh.
And then I guess the oil boom was good until sometime in the 50s.
And the price got too low, I guess.
Yeah, and wells, I guess, went out. I just don't know.
Oh, they just dried up.
Yeah, I guess. I just don't know.
Interesting. So he built that house.
Right. And he rived the shingles that went on the roof.
Really?
Yeah. He took a fro, he cut white oak trees down, and then he cut blocks about this long, I guess, and he would split those, and then he would take his fro and split it even more to make the shingles that went on the
So
house.
they're really thin.
I guess they were about that
They
big.
used a cross saw to.
Oh, of course it was a cross saw.
To these blocks.
Yeah, there's a picture somewhere, and I don't know where it is, of my mother and her sister, Aunt Lilla, who married Daddy's brother, Alfred, using a cross-cut saw to saw firewood.
The two sisters were?
Huh?
The two sisters were using the saw?
Yeah, my mama and Aunt Lilla.
They're working hard.
Well, they did.
Yeah.
They worked in the field. Mama would go to the cotton field to pick cotton, and she would put a quilt down on the ground at the end of a row and put Alvern on it, and I had the responsibility of keeping Alvern on that row while Mama picked cotton.
How much younger was Elvin than you?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. Wow.
And I remember her going to milk in the afternoon, and she would put a little chair out on the front porch so she could see me and Alvern. She would put Alvern in my lap, and she said, "Sit here in this chair until I get back, and don't let Alvern fall."
My goodness.
And Alvern wasn't always quiet. She cried. Wanted down.
I was going to say, I bet she wasn't very cooperative.
She wanted down, and I can remember singing to her "Rockabye Baby" to the top of my voice.
Be quiet. Oh, wow.
She was what, 2 and you were 4?
Right.
Something like that?
That's right.
Oh, my goodness.
But see, we had responsibility at an early age because we had to.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things.
It's a necessity.
Yeah, a necessity. And see, my mom was one of 10 children, and so as the younger children were being born, an older child was responsible for a younger child.
I think a lot of large families still do that kind of.
Right. Well, you just
It's
about
just
have
so
to.
much work, yeah.
You don't have time to individually do that, and that was the way it was in Papa's family.
Wow. So, let's see. I thought of something that I wanted to ask you.
Now, Mom made all of our clothes, made our underwear. She made mine and Alvern's dresses, and poor Alvern, bless her heart, I was larger, a little bit larger than she, so my dress was a little bit larger. And Mom bought enough fabric that she could get 2 dresses out of the same fabric. So when I outgrew mine, it went down to Alvern. So Alvern had the
She
same.
got to wear the same dress twice.
Poor girl.
Well, so how often, so she did wash with the washboard,
Yeah.
live soap. How
No.
often did she
Once a week.
wash?
Once a week.
Okay, and she washed everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad's overalls, the boys' overalls and shirts, our underwear, dishcloths, sheets, pillowcases,
Now, did the family bathe in a
Wash tub.
washman? Okay, okay.
wash tub.
Wash tub. Wow. And so when did electricity come into the picture?
We got electricity in 1947.
Okay, was that part of the New Deal program when they were?
No.
No?
No, New Deal program was before then.
Wow.
But we got electricity in 1947 when Kathy was a baby.
Was
Wow.
it an electric cooperative?
No,
No?
it was Arkansas Power and Light.
Okay.
So it was a whole grid. You didn't have to like have a windmill or anything?
No.
Okay.
We don't have enough wind in Arkansas, in South
Yeah, I
Arkansas,
figured, yeah.
to
Okay.
do that. Harvey C. Couch, who founded Arkansas Power and Light,
Oh, he did.
grew up in Calhoun.
So that's why that electrical plant was named after him.
Yeah,
There's a
that one over at substation over at Stamps.
Yeah.
And see the high school I graduated from in Calhoun? That was Harvey C. Couch High School.
He was a man of stature.
And Granddaddy Click and he played together as boys.
Really?
In fact,
That's Jesse?
Jesse.
Click?
Jesse Couch Click.
Oh. Okay.
See, the Couch family and the Click
Close.
family were close.
Okay. Huh.
See, Granddaddy Click, great granddaddy Click, settled around Calhoun. And so, and I've got the early land description of where land he owned, but I don't know
Where that is.
where that is.
I'd like to see that.
That's interesting.
I'd like to find it sometime.
Yeah.
Wow.
So your mom milked the cows
Right?
and then churned the butter?
No, Muffin churned the
You
butter.
churned the butter?
Yeah, when I got big enough to churn, I churned.
Okay.
That
How
was-
old do you think you were?
Well, honey, you can be 4 years old and stand there and churn. Now, Daddy made the churn dash. We had a big crock, a 3-gallon crock.
3 gallons. Wow.
And Mama would pour the milk in it and let it sour. It turned to what we call clabber. And then I would churn, and the butter would rise to the top. And then she would gather the butter, what she called gathering it, getting out off the milk, and then pour up the buttermilk in jars. And you know that pitcher I have sitting on the cabinet on my counter next to the refrigerator?
Yes.
That's Mama's buttermilk pitcher.
So she'd put all the buttermilk into that pitcher.
Well, she put some of it, and she had more
Oh, yeah,
than
it was-
it went into
it was a
other.
3-gallon churn. It wouldn't all fit.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's really something.
But the churn dash Daddy had made, and he had like a broom handle that he had used, and then he drilled a hole in 2 boards about like this, shaped like that, and put them together, and put them on that stick, on that handle.
So it was like an X at the bottom
Right.
of the.
And see, there was a lid that fit on that top of that churn to keep from splattering
Right.
all over everything. And then you just did this.
You had to agitate it.
What was the wood? Kind of like white oak or something?
Probably oak. Yeah.
Wow.
And he cut down the oak.
Oh, I'm sure he did, you know.
And he probably just saved that oak to use for whatever he needed.
Whatever he needed for.
Well, I mean, you used plenty of oak just for
Primarily
firewood.
firewood. And so, whatever was handy. Now, nothing went to waste on the farm. Nothing. Daddy's old worn out shoes, his old work shoes, brogans he called them, the leather tongues were hinges on the barn doors, or straps and then to close the door. So
The
there was
handle.
nothing. And then if he didn't have that, then he cut out a sort of a D-shaped thing, or found a branch that would do that, and then he would put a nail in a piece of wood that would fall down
Ah.
in that,
So it would be a hook and
and it would be a
eye sort of-
latch.
Yeah. Oh,
If he didn't have that, he just sometimes had something in the middle. It went over across this way and over that way, and just turn it
Was
to
it
the
a
door.
limb with the right shape
Yeah,
branch on it?
Yeah.
yeah, it would do
Good
just
enough?
fine.
You just tack a nail in the end of it, and
That's right.
it would do that,
Yep.
and be the hook.
And so
Did you
that's
have
what.
a barn to milk the cattle in?
We didn't milk the cows in the barn, but a shed attached to the barn.
Shed.
Right. Now, there were stalls in the barn,
Right.
and I never liked to go in there because it was dark.
Were the pails, did y'all have metal pails or did y'all have wood pails?
Metal.
Metal.
They were Sometimes they were aluminum, but Mama liked
Galvanized?
that
That
it's
porcelain
covered.
covered
Yeah,
porcelain?
Oh, the enamel.
the enamel.
enamel,
She
yeah.
really liked an enamel pan better.
Yeah.
Well, that is, well, she has good taste.
And she-
Easier to clean.
And
Well,
she
it won't get any metal into the milk
Yeah,
either.
exactly.
and she did not sit down to milk. She
still-
stood with her head on the cow's hip
And bent over.
and bent over.
Well, I know it's common to lean,
She
even if
laid
you're on a
her
stool.
laid her
but-
head on the
Yeah,
cow's
she-
and milk. I never learned to milk. I tried, but I never could. And Mama, of
Skill
course,
for that.
yeah.
So how many times a day did she have to?
Well, it depends on if the cow was what they call fresh and just had a calf. She gave more milk, and
Right.
so therefore it would take 2 milkings, morning and evening. And as the calf got older, then it was just in the morning.
Right. Well, the calf needed more probably.
Yeah.
At that point.
Well, now we didn't let the calf run with the cow.
Oh, really?
No, that was another job I had, was to take the calf across the road to put it in the calf pasture.
Really?
Because-
So they could start eating grass immediately?
Well, it stayed with the cow for a while, but just a few, maybe a couple of weeks, and then it was eating grass.
Wow.
Well, then when you got a calf and raised it, did you just go sell it then?
Sometimes it was sold, sometimes, once, Daddy tried to kill one a year, and Mama canned the meat.
Canned
Oh.
it?
Did she have to add anything to can it? Or was it just
No,
the
it was just she stuffed it in a jar, and seems like she partially cooked it,
Yeah, I
and made a broth, and put the meat in the jar, and then the broth, and then sealed that and pressure cooked it for so long.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. A pressure cooker will enable you to kill all the germs.
And we thought it was delicious. She would, what I really liked was a sandwich that she would take this canned beef
The
and
veal.
grind it with, in the sausage mill, and then add pickles and onions and things to it, and mayonnaise,
Probably pretty tasty.
and it was tasty.
You raised your cucumbers to make the pickles out of.
Oh yeah, Mama made pickles.
Well, so how did you get the vinegar?
Well, you had to buy vinegar.
You bought vinegar.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to buy vinegar.
Wow.
And did you have dill to go with the pickles? Did you
Mama
raise
didn't
that?
make dill
She
pickles.
didn't make dill?
No, she just made sour pickles or sweet pickles.
Okay.
Those
Sweet
are both
pickles, she used sugar.
Yeah.
Did you raise any sugar cane?
Oh no, sugar
bought
cane
sugar.
sugar was a thing that we bought.
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, she said the ground wasn't wet enough for sugar cane. That's not
Oh, and see, I started to school when I was 6,
Okay.
and we had a big chief tablet, and it was a picture red on the front was the big chief.
Really?
Picture of an Indian chief.
It was really coarse paper.
Yeah, it was coarse paper, and a cedar pencil.
Really?
The outside was cedar.
How long did that have to last you?
Well, until it wore down to a nub,
And then you get another one?
and then we get another one, get another pencil.
And your pad, your chief,
Well, it depends on
you ran out of
until ran out of paper, and the tablet cost a nickel, and the pencil cost a penny, I think, or 2 for a penny. I've forgotten.
Wow.
And that was our school supplies. Well, now, and through the 8th grade, our books were furnished in Arkansas.
Oh, okay.
Until, did you have to buy books? No, you didn't, did you, when you went to high school? I think it wasn't long, though, because I had to buy my high school books.
Wow. So what kind of things did you learn in high school? What were the subjects?
Well, I took geometry, Algebra 1. I didn't take out what Algebra 2 wasn't offered. Chemistry, English 4 years, civics, world history, American history, and I didn't take a history as a senior.
Okay. Wow. And so then after you finished finished high school, you went straight to college, or? did you
No,
take-
I married your granddad in January before I graduated from high school.
Oh, so you weren't even graduated yet?
No.
I didn't know that.
You didn't
Okay.
know that?
Well, I knew you were young, so it makes sense. You were 17, right?
I was 17, almost 18.
Wow. And
So
then,
you got married in January
Uh-huh.
at 17, but you turned 18 in February.
In February, right. So just a few days before I was 18. But my dad would not go to the courthouse to sign for me to get married, so I had to say I was 18. And
you forged a legal document?
but he knew I was going.
Yes.
He knew I was going.
He
But
just didn't wanna,
no, he didn't want me to.
did he not like Dandy?
Oh, he loved him. He was fine.
Oh, okay.
It was just I was too young. He said,
He wanted you to wait.
see, he was 27 when he married.
Uh-huh.
And he says, you're just not old enough. But there was nothing wrong with the choice.
Okay. That's funny.
So he went hunting.
Made sure he wasn't available.
He wasn't available.
Does Ariel know about the music you played for Steve and Jerry and Debbie when they were little?
What music did you play?
Oh, well, to wake them up in the morning. And started with Stephen, and I would say, good morning to you, good morning to you. And good morning, dear Stephen, good morning to you. And he was like,
He put the covers over his head. You wouldn't get up? He didn't just spring out of bed?
now, he would sit up on, I would say, are you awake? Yes, I'm awake. Okay, he'd sit up on the side of the bed, and I would talk to him and go on to Jerry's room and sing the same song, only it was Dear
And Jerry
Jerry.
woke up happy, like, yes, let's go to school.
No, sometimes he said, just don't sing.
Just don't sing.
I'm talking about the 45 record.
Oh, well.
The 45.
Just
Do
a
you still
minute.
have it?
Oh, yeah.
Ariel needs that.
And then,
Really, Becky
then I went to
Lawson.
Debbie's room and sang to her.
Uh-huh.
And then I went back to your dad and said, Stephen, get out of bed.
He needed to be told twice.
Debbie got up right away.
Marge, you know what I'm talking about?
Cheerful.
Yeah,
You do?
yeah,
Tell
that
her
one.
about
Be kind to your parents.
I'm surprised Dad survived at your house.
Oh, well, he's just like his father, so.
Ariel, you need to hear this song. Sing it, Marge. You know how to sing it?
I know I've forgotten. Be kind to your parents.
Be kind to your parents, 'cause they are important. Come on, Steve. You probably do it because she drilled it probably in there.
Did she play it every day?
No.
No. Was it only on special occasions when they
No.
needed to hear it?
We bought a record
Record.
player, and it was a collection of 40. What was it? 45s.
Yeah.
45.
And 78s.
And okay, and Stevens played it more than Debbie or Jerry, and his favorite was Tonka Wake On. Do you remember that one, Stephen?
Yeah. It's from a movie.
Oh, really? Is it like an Indian movie? I
Yeah, it was a
guess?
Western.
Western.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I don't think I ever saw the movie, but
You heard you knew the soundtrack. Wow. So when you married Dandy, where did you guys move?
Well, Dandy was recalled into the service,
Right.
Army, and so we married the 27th of January, and I think the next week he reported for active duty
Oh.
in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
So you guys wanted to get married before he had to report for duty. You
Uh-huh.
knew he was going to be.
Right, we knew he was going to be,
Okay.
but he was in college. You know, he had served 2 years, I think, and then came home and started back to college,
Uh-huh.
and then he was what war was that? The Korean.
yes.
The Korean War broke out, and he was called back into
Oh, I
service.
didn't realize he served in Korea.
He didn't
Yeah.
serve
Oh,
in
he didn't?
Korea.
Oh, okay.
But because of the conflict, they called a bunch of soldiers.
I see.
Right, that had already received training.
I see.
And Dandy went to Alaska, his first tour of duty.
I remember
was
him
in-
talking about
He
that.
loved Alaska. and always said he was going back, but we never did, except when
The cruise.
the cruise. But we didn't go back
That
and
was
settle.
probably more fun than
It
living
didn't
there
go back
full
and
time.
settle on 40 acres. Thank goodness we didn't.
Well, I think
He
Scott.
wanted a homestead
Yeah, he didn't want it to homestead.
and get 40 acres where she's living there.
Well,
Yeah.
I think Scott's out of tape.
We are running out of memory card.
Okay, so but
Okay,
thank you so much, Marvin.
well, this is,
Could you do me a huge favor? Could you look at the camera and tell me today's date?
today is Friday, July the 28th,
That's right.
Year?
2018,
And you are?
85.
I was actually asking for your name, but that's good too. So just give me your full name.
Pardon me?
Just say your full name into the camera.
Joy Margarine Chambers Click.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh,
You're
I'm
welcome.
so excited. Yeah, 'cause some of this stuff I had not heard. I'm so glad that you were able